The morning sun cast a golden glow over Westminster Abbey as thousands of people lined the streets of London. Camera crews from around the world had positioned themselves at every corner, ready to capture what would become one of the most talked-about moments in recent royal history. Among the crowd, social media influencers held their phones high, streaming live to millions of viewers who couldn't make the journey to witness the historic coronation in person inside the ancient abbey. Prince William stood quietly in a private chamber, adjusting his ceremonial robes one final time. His reflection in the ornate mirror showed a man who had grown tremendously since his younger days. The weight of responsibility was evident in his eyes, but there was something else there too. It's a deep sense of purpose that hadn't been present in his earlier public appearances. His wife Catherine entered the room, her own coronation attire perfectly arranged. She moved with the grace that had made her beloved by people worldwide. But her attention was entirely focused on her husband. Without saying a word, she reached up and straightened a small detail on his collar that only she would have noticed. Their children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, waited in the adjoining room with their nanny, their excited chatter providing a soundtrack of pure joy to the solemn preparations. The abbey bells began to toll, their ancient, bronze voices calling the nation to witness this momentous occasion. Outside, the crowd's anticipation reached fever pitch as royal carriages began arriving. Its dignitaries from across the Commonwealth took their seats, while millions more watched from their homes, offices, and gathering places around the globe. As William prepared to make his entrance, he took a moment to look out through a small window at the sea of faces below. These weren't just spectators. They were people who had followed his journey from a shy young boy walking behind his mother's coffin to the confident leader he had become. Many in the crowd held handmade signs and wore clothing featuring photos from different stages of his life, creating a visual timeline of his growth. The Archbishop of Canterbury appeared at the chamber door, his ceremonial vestments pristine and his expression both solemn and proud. He had known William since childhood and understood better than most the transformation that had taken place over the years. The two men exchanged a meaningful look before the Archbishop nodded toward the Abbey's main hall, where history awaited. William's private secretary handed him a small, leather-bound book, a gift from his late grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. Containing her personal notes about leadership and service, he had discovered it among her belongings after her passing, and reading her words had profoundly influenced his understanding of what it meant to serve the people. The book would remain with him throughout the ceremony, a tangible connection to the wisdom of previous generations. The processional music began, its haunting melody echoing through the stone corridors of the abbey. William closed his eyes briefly, thinking of his mother Diana and how proud she would have been to see this moment. He thought of his father, whose own journey to leadership had been filled with challenges and growth. Most importantly, he thought of the future he wanted to help create for his children and for all the families watching around the world. Catherine took her place beside him as they prepared to enter the main hall. Their hands briefly touched, a simple gesture that spoke volumes about their partnership and shared commitment to the responsibilities ahead. Behind them, their children arranged themselves with the seriousness that only young people can bring to important occasions, understanding that they were part of something bigger than themselves. The great doors of Westminster Abbey opened, revealing a scene that would be remembered for generations. Hundreds of guests rose to their feet as William and his family began their walk down the ancient aisle. But what happened next would surprise everyone present and create a moment that would spread across the internet faster than anyone could have predicted, touching hearts in ways that formal royal protocol never could. As Prince William began his procession down the aisle of Westminster Abbey, something unexpected happened that would later become the most shared moment on social media. Young Prince Louis, who had been walking solemnly beside his siblings, suddenly spotted his grandfather, King Charles III, seated at the front of the abbey. Unable to contain his excitement, the 6-year-old broke away from the formal processional line and ran straight to his grandfather. With arms wide open, the entire abbey held its breath for a moment. Royal protocol dictated strict adherence to ceremonial procedures, and any deviation from the planned sequence could be seen as a serious breach of tradition. Security personnel tensed, ready to intervene, while television cameras captured every second of the unfolding scene. But what happened next surprised everyone and revealed something beautiful about the royal family that the public rarely gets to see, instead of being redirected back to his place. Prince William simply smiled and nodded to his son, giving him permission to embrace his grandfather. King Charles III, despite wearing the heavy ceremonial crown and robes of state, immediately opened his arms to receive his grandson. The embrace lasted only a few seconds, but those moments captured the genuine love and warmth that exists within the royal family. Beyond all the pomp and circumstance, the crowd inside the abbey began to murmur with delight, and many guests found themselves wiping away tears at the touching display of family affection. The moment felt authentic and human, in a way that formal royal events rarely achieve. Catherine, still walking in the processional, caught her son's eye and gave him a gentle smile that seemed to say she understood his excitement, wasn't upset by his spontaneous action. What made the moment even more special was Prince William's reaction. Instead of showing any embarrassment or concern about the breach of protocol, he paused his own walk to allow his son to have that moment with his grandfather. He stood there, completely at ease, while his youngest child expressed the pure joy that so many people felt about the occasion but couldn't show due to the formal nature of the event. Princess Charlotte and Prince George, meanwhile, had stopped walking and were watching their little brother with expressions that mixed amusement with slight worry about whether he was in trouble. But when they saw their father's relaxed demeanor and their grandfather's obvious joy, they too began to smile. The entire royal family seemed to share a moment of genuine happiness that transcended the ceremonial requirements of the day. The Archbishop of Canterbury, who had been preparing to begin the formal ceremony, found himself smiling as well. His decades of conducting royal ceremonies, he had never seen such a spontaneous display of family love during such a solemn occasion. Later, he would describe it as a reminder that beneath the crowns and titles, the royal family consists of real people with real relationships and genuine emotions. Television commentators around the world found themselves at a loss for words. As they tried to describe what they were witnessing, the carefully planned commentary about ceremonial traditions and historical significance suddenly seemed less important than the simple, "It's a beautiful moment unfolding before their cameras." Many would later say that this single embrace did more to humanize the royal family than years of carefully orchestrated public appearances. Social media platforms immediately began buzzing with activity as viewers shared clips of the moment. The hashtag Prince Louis began trending within minutes, followed by heartfelt royal moment and genuine royal love. People from all walks of life found themselves touched by the scene, with many commenting that it reminded them of their own families and the importance of showing affection even during formal occasions. As Prince Louis finally returned to his place in the processional line, he looked up at his father with a slightly worried expression, as if suddenly realizing he might have done something wrong. Prince William simply reached down and gently squeezed his son's shoulder, a gesture that communicated approval and love without words. The procession then continued. But the atmosphere in the abbey had completely changed from formal solemnity to warm celebration. The ceremony continued with a warmth that hadn't been present at the beginning. Prince William's handling of his son's spontaneous moment had set a tone that rippled through the entire abbey. Guests who had arrived expecting a strictly formal event found themselves relaxing and enjoying what was becoming a celebration of family as much as a coronation ceremony. When the time came for Prince William to take his oath of service, something remarkable happened in his delivery. Instead of simply reciting the traditional words with ceremonial gravity, he spoke them with a passion and sincerity that made everyone present feel like they were witnessing something truly meaningful. His voice carried clearly through the ancient stones of the abbey, reaching not just the distinguished guests, but somehow connecting with the millions of people watching from around the world as he spoke about his commitment to serve all people regardless of their background or circumstances. His eyes found ordinary citizens who had been invited to represent different communities across the Commonwealth. There was Mrs. Sarah Chen, a teacher from Manchester who had dedicated her life to educating children from disadvantaged backgrounds. There was James Thompson, a veteran who had started a charity helping homeless former service members find housing and purpose. When William's gaze met each of these individuals, he wasn't just reciting words, he was making personal commitments to real people, whose lives and work he had studied and admired. This wasn't lost on anyone present, and many later commented that they had never seen a royal ceremony that felt so personally connected to the lives of ordinary citizens. The most powerful moment came when Prince William spoke about the responsibility he felt toward future generations. As he mentioned his hopes for a better world for all children, his own 3 children listened with rapt attention. Prince George, as the eldest, seemed to understand the weight of what his father was saying. Princess Charlotte nodded seriously at several points, as if already thinking about her own future role in serving others. Even young Prince Louis, despite his earlier excitement, stood perfectly still, somehow sensing the importance of his father's words. Catherine watched from her seat with an expression of deep pride and love. Those who knew her well could see that she was thinking not just about the man she married, but about the leader he had become. The journey from their university days to this moment had been filled with challenges, growth, and an ever-deepening understanding of what it meant to serve others. She had been his partner through every step of that transformation. The international guests present represented dozens of countries and cultures, but they all seemed united in their recognition that they were witnessing something special. The Japanese delegation, known for their appreciation of ceremony and tradition, exchanged approving glances. The representatives from various African nations, many of whom had complex relationships with the British monarchy due to colonial history, found themselves moved by William's clear commitment to equality and justice when the moment came for the actual coronation. The placing of the crown on William's head, the entire abbey fell into profound silence. But instead of the usual formal stillness, this felt like a moment of shared breath-holding, as if everyone present was participating in something sacred together. The weight of history was present, but so was hope for the future. The most touching moment came immediately after the crown was placed. Tradition called for a formal acknowledgement from the assembled guests. But what happened instead was a spontaneous standing ovation that seemed to come from genuine emotion rather than ceremonial requirement. People weren't just honoring a new king, they were celebrating a leader who had shown them something authentic and inspiring. The cameras captured tears in the eyes of many guests, from world leaders to ordinary citizens. These weren't tears of sadness or overwhelming emotion, but tears of joy and hope. People felt like they had witnessed not just a coronation, but a promise of leadership that would be different from what had come before, more personal, more connected, more genuinely committed to making life better for everyone. As the ceremony moved toward its conclusion, social media continued to explode with positive reactions from around the world. The combination of Prince Louis's spontaneous affection, William's heartfelt delivery of his oaths, and the overall atmosphere of genuine warmth had created something that people everywhere could connect with and celebrate. As the coronation ceremony reached its final moments, something unprecedented began happening outside Westminster Abbey. The crowds that had gathered to witness the historic event were not dispersing as expected. Instead, they were growing larger and more enthusiastic. Word had spread through social media about the heartwarming moments inside the Abbey, and people who hadn't originally planned to attend were now making their way to central London to be part of the celebration. The official schedule called for Prince William and his family to make a brief appearance on the balcony of Buckingham Palace before retiring for private celebrations. However, as their motorcade made its way through the streets of London, the new king made a decision that would further cement this day as extraordinary. Seeing the massive crowds of people lining every street, many holding homemade signs and flowers, he instructed his driver to stop the car. Royal protection officers immediately went into high alert mode. Unscheduled stops were a security nightmare, and the protocols for such situations were complex and rarely implemented. But Prince William had noticed something in the crowd that moved him deeply. There was an elderly woman in a wheelchair accompanied by what appeared to be her granddaughter, holding a sign that read, "Thank you for showing us that royalty means caring." Against all security advice, Prince William stepped out of the car and walked directly toward the woman.
Oh.
The crowd around her fell silent, unable to believe what they were seeing. The newly crowned king, still wearing his ceremonial robes, knelt down beside the wheelchair so he could speak to the woman at eye level. Their conversation lasted only a few minutes, but those who were close enough to hear said he asked about her family, thanked her for coming despite the challenges of getting around the crowded streets, and assured her that her presence meant everything to him. The woman, whose name was later revealed to be Margaret Foster, a 89-year-old retired nurse who had served in hospitals for over 50 years, was visibly moved to tears. She later told reporters that Prince William had thanked her for her decades of service to others and said that people like her were the true nobility of the nation. The interaction was captured by dozens of phones and immediately began spreading across the internet, but Prince William wasn't finished. Seeing the positive reaction from the crowd and the genuine joy on people's faces, he made another unprecedented decision. He asked his security team to arrange for an impromptu walkabout along the entire route to Buckingham Palace. Never been done on Coronation Day, and it threw the carefully planned schedule into complete chaos. Catherine, understanding her husband's instincts perfectly, stepped out of the car to join him. Their children, initially uncertain about the change in plans, quickly caught on to the excitement and asked if they could participate too. What followed was a spontaneous royal walkabout that lasted nearly 2 hours and covered almost a mile. Of London streets, the scenes that unfolded were unlike anything seen in modern royal history. Prince William and his family moved through the crowds not as distant figures waving from a secure distance, but as people genuinely connecting with other people. They stopped to pet dogs, admired children's drawings, accepted flowers from shy toddlers, and posed for countless selfies with people of all ages and backgrounds. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis proved to be natural ambassadors, charming everyone they met with their curiosity and friendliness. Prince Louis, still energized from his earlier hug with his grandfather, seemed particularly delighted by all the attention and spent much of the walkabout giving high fives to children in the crowd. The internet response was immediate and overwhelming. Videos of the walkabout were viewed millions of times within hours. The hashtag Royal Walkabout began trending globally, along with Coronation Joy and People's Prince. News organizations around the world scrambled to adjust their coverage plans, with many extending their broadcast to accommodate the unexpected events. What made the walkabout even more special was the diversity of people Prince William and his family encountered. London's crowds reflected the multicultural nature of modern Britain and the royal family's interactions with people from different ethnic backgrounds, religions, and walks of life sent a powerful message about inclusivity and unity. One particularly moving moment occurred when they met a group of nurses who had traveled from Scotland to attend the coronation. These healthcare workers had been on the front lines during the pandemic, and Prince William spent several minutes talking with them about their experiences and thanking them for their service. Several of the nurses were moved to tears, and their emotional reactions were captured in photos that would later appear on front pages around the world. As news of the impromptu walkabout spread through social media and television coverage, something remarkable began happening across the United Kingdom and throughout the Commonwealth. Street parties that had been planned as modest local celebrations were suddenly expanding as more neighbors joined in. Pubs that had expected quiet afternoon crowds found themselves packed with people wanting to watch the continuing coverage together. In small towns and villages across the country, people who had been watching alone at home began calling friends and family, inviting them over to share in the excitement. The impact wasn't limited to the United Kingdom. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and other Commonwealth nations, the positive reaction was equally strong. Social media posts showed families gathering around televisions, many wiping away tears as they watched the royal family's genuine interactions with ordinary people. The contrast between this coronation and previous formal royal events was striking. and people everywhere seemed to recognize that they were witnessing a new chapter in the monarchy's relationship with the public. International news networks found themselves in the unusual position of extending their coverage far beyond what they had planned. CNN, BBC World Service, and other major outlets received messages from viewers around the globe asking them to continue broadcasting the events. The typical post-coronation analysis segments were replaced with live coverage of the ongoing celebrations. In London streets, back at the walkabout, Prince William encountered a group of military veterans who had served in Afghanistan. These men and women had been through some of the most challenging experiences imaginable, and many struggled with the transition back to civilian life. When Prince William, who had served as a search and rescue helicopter pilot, began talking with them about their shared experiences, the conversation quickly became deeply emotional. One veteran, former sergeant named David Martinez, who had lost his leg in an IED explosion, told Prince William about his struggles with depression and how difficult it had been to find purpose after leaving the military. Instead of offering standard royal platitudes, Prince William shared his own experiences with the mental health challenges that can come with military service and his work with organizations supporting veterans' mental health. The conversation lasted nearly 15 minutes, much longer than any single interaction during a typical royal engagement. Security personnel grew increasingly nervous about the extended stop, but Prince William was clearly unwilling to cut short a meaningful conversation with someone who had sacrificed so much in service to his country. The veteran later told reporters that he felt truly heard and understood, and that the interaction had given him new hope about his future. Catherine, meanwhile, had been drawn into conversation with a group of teachers who had brought their students to witness the historic day. The educators were passionate about their work, but exhausted by the challenges facing public education. Catherine, who had always championed early childhood development in education, listened intently to their concerns and shared her own observations about the importance of supporting both teachers and students. The children with the teachers were initially shy around the Princess of Wales, but her warm manner quickly put them at ease. Soon she was sitting on the curb, still in her formal coronation attire, helping a 7-year-old named Amelia draw a picture of the royal family. The image of Catherine, dressed in her ceremonial robes and tiara, sitting at street-level coloring with a child, became one of the most shared photos of the entire day. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis had each found their own ways to connect with the crowd. Prince George, mature for his age, seemed particularly interested in talking with other children about their schools and hobbies. Princess Charlotte charmed everyone with her confidence and curiosity, asking people about their jobs and families with genuine interest. Prince Louis continued to be the crowd favorite, his infectious enthusiasm and spontaneous hugs melting hearts wherever he went. As the afternoon progressed, the mood of the entire event had transformed from formal ceremony to joyous celebration. Street musicians who had positioned themselves along the route began playing. Some members of the crowd started singing traditional British songs. The atmosphere became festival-like, with people sharing food, taking photos with strangers, and generally celebrating not just the coronation, but the sense of community that had emerged. The most powerful moment of the walkabout came near its end, when Prince William encountered a group of young activists who had been working on environmental and social justice issues. These young people, initially nervous about meeting the newly crowned king, found themselves in an extensive discussion about climate change, inequality, and the role of leadership in addressing these challenges. Prince William's engagement with their concerns was serious and substantive. Several of the activists later said they felt genuinely hopeful about having a leader who was willing to listen to their generation's concerns. As evening approached and the impromptu walkabout finally came to an end, Prince William and his family made their way to Buckingham Palace for what had been planned as a traditional balcony appearance. However, the events of the day had created such an atmosphere of connection and celebration that even this final formal moment would be transformed into something special. The crowds gathered in front of Buckingham Palace had swelled beyond all expectations. What had started as the usual collection of royal watchers and tourists had become a diverse gathering of people from all walks of life, who had been drawn to participate in what they recognized as a historic day. The mood was jubilant but respectful. with people sharing stories of the day's events and forming new friendships with strangers who had become fellow witnesses to history. When Prince William and his family finally appeared on the famous balcony, the roar from the crowd was unlike anything heard at previous royal celebrations. But what happened next surprised everyone, including the royal family themselves. Instead of the traditional brief wave and retreat that protocol dictated, the crowd began chanting "Thank you" over and over again, the simple words repeated by thousands of voices. It's created a moment of genuine emotion that seemed to catch everyone off guard. Prince William, visibly moved by the response, stepped forward to the balcony's edge and did something that broke with centuries of royal tradition. He spoke directly to the crowd below, without microphones or formal preparation. His words, carried by the wind and the acoustic properties of the palace courtyard, reached the people gathered below, and were picked up by television microphones. "Today has shown me something I will never forget," he called out, his voice carrying clearly in the evening air. "You have shown me that being a king is not about wearing a crown or living in a palace. It's about serving people who care deeply, about each other, and about building a better future together. Thank you for teaching me that lesson on the most important day of my life." The crowd's response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of people began applauding, many wiping away tears. The spontaneous speech, captured by cameras and broadcast around the world, would be remembered as one of the defining moments of the coronation. It perfectly captured the spirit of the day and the transformation that had occurred in how people viewed the monarchy. Catherine, standing beside her husband with their children, reached over and took his hand. The gesture was simple but powerful, showing the partnership and support that had made the day's events possible. Their children, who had been such an important part of the day's magic, waved enthusiastically to the crowd, their genuine joy infectious to everyone watching as the royal family finally retreated from the balcony, and the crowds began to disperse. The real impact of the day was just beginning to be felt. Social media platforms were flooded with positive messages from people around the world. The hashtags from the day: Prince Louis, Heartfelt Royal Moment, Royal Walkabout, and Coronation Joy continued trending for days afterward. News organizations that had prepared critical analysis pieces about the monarchy found themselves instead writing about renewal, connection, and hope. Political commentators who had expected to discuss the relevance of the royal family in modern times instead found themselves talking about leadership, authenticity, and the power of genuine human connection. The international reaction was equally positive. World leaders who had attended the ceremony spoke publicly about being impressed by Prince William's approach to his new role. President Macron of France commented that he had witnessed a new model of leadership that combines tradition with genuine care for people. The German Chancellor noted that the day had shown the best of what democratic institutions can be when they truly serve their people. Perhaps most importantly, the day had a lasting impact on how ordinary people viewed the possibility of positive change in their own lives and communities. Social workers reported that the weeks following the coronation saw an increase in volunteer applications and community involvement. Teachers said their students seemed more engaged and hopeful about the future. Mental health organizations noted that the open discussions about emotional well-being during the day had encouraged more people to seek help when they needed it. Months later, historians would debate whether Prince William's coronation marked a genuine turning point in the relationship between the monarchy and the people, or whether it was simply a beautiful moment that wouldn't lead to lasting change. But for the millions of people who witnessed it, either in person or through media coverage, the day had provided something precious and rare. A reminder that authentic leadership, genuine emotion, and simple human kindness could still make a difference in the world. The lasting image from the coronation wasn't the formal ceremony or the ancient traditions, but rather the sight of a newly crowned king kneeling beside an elderly woman's wheelchair, or a princess in full ceremonial dress sitting on a curb helping a child with a drawing, or a 6-year-old prince running to hug his grandfather with pure, unguarded love. These moments had shown everyone watching that at its best, leadership is about connection, service, and the courage to be genuinely human, even in the most formal circumstances.